Hey there. You all tucked in and comfortable tonight? All right, good. If there's any worries, anything that's weighing heavy on your mind, just set them aside. Everything always works out. You know that. It's happened time and time again. No need to let worry or fears or imagining things that may not happen steal your peaceful sleep. All right? All right, good. Now, what kind of story shall we listen to tonight? Oh, you're in the mood for snow. All right. Something happy and upbeat? I can do that. All right, snuggle in, sweetie. Hey, and before you fall asleep, I love you. Princess Maia was loved and adored by all the snow people of Icefield. She had come from the world beyond the glaciers, where no snowman or snow lady had ever dared to go. There were myths and legends about the other world popular among the snow people, stories that had resulted in the spread of fear. So no one ever even thought about going into the other world, not even once in the history of Icefield. It was said that snow folks melted away long before reaching the outer edges of their own world. But deep down, even if they didn't admit it to themselves, everyone was curious about the reality they had never experienced, or perhaps never could experience, for that matter. It was primarily for this reason that Princess Maia had been such a subject of fascination. When a couple of snow hunters had found her in the forest, peacefully sleeping in a basket, there was a letter with her that allowed some smart snow people to figure out where she came from. As fate would have it, a tragic blizzard struck Icefield a few years later. By the time Princess Maia had learned to walk, talk, laugh, and play, she was loved by everyone, even as a child, due to her sweet and helpful nature. Roaming the streets, having friendly snowball fights with the snow kids, she often helped strangers who dropped their carrot noses or twig arms. Sometimes, she would go as far as rushing into the marketplace and fetching a new carrot or twig for stressed out snow people in need. Even as a young person, she had a flair for architecture, and she crafted all kinds of shapes from powdery snow. Blissfully and eagerly, she lived her life with the snow people as a different being. But all of that changed with the great blizzard that wreaked havoc on the settlement. Igloos crumbled and shattered. Statues of ice, representations of great snow people, were all struck down. All the residents of Icefield were upset and sad over the loss of their homes. It would have taken them months to repair their homes. But luckily for the town, Princess Maia's secret gift was unveiled during the blizzard. As shards of ice blew through the snow-matted streets, she instinctively whipped up a shield of solid ice that served as protection. Calling for panicking snow people to take cover, she slowly transformed the block into a frozen cocoon that protected the others and herself. The news spread rapidly across Icefield as the young Princess Maia began to reconstruct the igloos in a blink. Generously using her heavenly powers, she brought Icefield back to normal. So grateful were the snow people that they appointed her as the ruler of them all. This position gave her the authority to begin the construction and transformation of Icefield. Soon the town was transformed into a bustling city of ice and snow. For herself, she built a beautiful little ice cottage up on a white hill, from which she descended every morning to perform her duties as the ruler of the kingdom. Although she had no shortage of friends and loved ones, in the Snow People, one desire was deeply embedded in her kind heart. She grew fascinated with the stories she heard of the outside world, a place where there was no snow or ice of any kind. Although she loved Icefield with all her heart, Princess Maia had a longing to someday see what the world was like on the outside. As she stepped into adulthood, the Snow Elder, who had found her in the basket, handed her the letter. He told her that it had been tucked into her blanket, and so it came to pass that Princess Maia learned of her origins, and all the questions she had mused on since childhood were finally answered. Unable to hold herself back, she decided that it was time to venture out of Icefield and into the wide world from whence she came. The entire population of Icefield was saddened by the news of her departure, but she promised them all to return one day and tell them everything there was to know about the other world. This cheered them up somewhat, as thousands of snow people gathered on the morning she was to leave to say their goodbyes. With a heavy heart, she started to make her way away from the only home she had ever known. Calmly and slowly, walking through fields of frozen sheets of water, she moved further and further away from Icefield. Snowflakes drifted down the cloud-laden sky. The soothing silence hung in the crisp air. During nights, she would forge a small icy camp to sleep in. Before drifting off to sleep, she would watch the moonlight glimmer on the mounds of snow covering the forest floor. Green trees were covered with the white powder, and the slightest of breeze sending down showers to the ground. Princess Maia amused herself by making ice statues of rabbits and penguins, putting hats and glasses on them. After a few days, she began to enter uncharted territory up into the mountains. With the discoveries she made, it was little wonder that no snow person had ever gotten that far. There were deep and large valleys which no one could have crossed but her. With the powers that nature had gifted to her, she built bridges of ice to cover the chasms. There were even dangerous beasts roaming the wilds who posed no threat whatsoever to her with the extraordinary abilities at her disposal. Night after night, Princess Maia traveled closer and closer to the other world. She could sense the change in temperature, which was rising with each day of her journey. The sun's rays were becoming a bit fierce as well during the days. By this time, she had started to miss her home, but there was no turning back, as she had come this far to achieve her dream. One night, she sat under the starry sky. A mantle of deep black spread over the heavens ceiling. The soft and milky moonlight suffused through the quiet sky, and there was not even a single cloud drifting by. Princess Maia thought of old times, of all the beautiful memories she had of Icefield stored in her head. A cloud of snow drifted into the air as a breeze kicked up. It remained suspended in the air for a while before slowly settling back onto the mounds covering the ground. She took a deep breath, wondering how everyone was doing back home. Sitting on a chair of ice she had crafted for herself, Princess Maia realized something crucial. It was only when things, people, places, and moments became memories that we realized their true worth. Having been away from home for so many days, possibly weeks, she started to comprehend a great many things. For instance, she had never known how much her home meant to her. She missed strolling through the matted snow streets, where the great hustle and bustle of snow people greeted her wherever she went. These torrents of memories, gushing forth in her head, made her question her decision to have left Icefield. She knew she could always go back, but there was no telling what great new avenues awaited her in the world in which she was born. Deciding to keep on pushing ahead, she made a little ice camp for herself and went to sleep inside. The next day, she chanced upon a most extraordinary event, the most unusual one in all her life. For the first time ever, she came across another human being. The sight of the person astonished her. The stranger was warming her hands over a fire at a campsite in the freezing mountain. Princess Maia approached and introduced herself. The stranger was surprised to find her in the icy wilderness wearing a silk gown. Likewise, Princess Maia was amused to see the bizarre garb on the stranger, so thick and furry. If it weren't for a glance of her face, she would have taken the stranger for a different breed of bear that could walk on its feet. After a little introductory chit-chat, they became comfortable. Now, the princess had never seen fire and was confused at the sight of it. The stranger was an adventurer in an exploration of a mythical world where it was always winter. Soon the princess and the explorer began sharing all the details they could about their worlds. It was difficult to tell who was more fascinated and awe-inspired by the conversation. The explorer made tea and offered biscuits to Princess Maia, who didn't like either of the two things that much. Even as she inched her hands closer to the fire, she found the sensation a bit unpleasant. Talking excitedly into the wee hours of the morning, Princess Maia found her mind drifting. Her imagination was vastly expanded within a few hours. The explorer gaped at her as she demonstrated her magical abilities unwittingly by conjuring her tent. Princess Maia was surprised to learn that her people could not conjure ice. Just as they decided to call it a day and fall asleep, they heard muffled footsteps in the distance. For a moment, the princess felt alarmed. preparing herself for whatever was coming their way. The explorer was a bit anxious too, as they both peered into the darkness ahead in the woods. But eventually, through the trees emerged a group of stags, their antlers sprinkled with snow. Princess Maia saw the creatures with fascination, as it was the first time she laid her eyes on them. The explorer was also delighted by the stag's emergence, went into her tent, and came out with treats and snacks. She handed over some of them to the princess, who placed them on her palm and stretched out her arm. Accepting the offer, one of the stags came over and licked the food clean off her hand. The tickling sensation made Princess Maia giggle with delight. By the explorer's encouragement, she reached out and caressed the fur coats of the stag. The texture was most unusual for her, although she had a pet rabbit in her childhood. This creature's fur covered a warm body, a sensation that the princess hadn't gotten used to. She questioned if she could ever get used to the warmth, adapt to it, and find it just as normal as the cold. As the explorer and the princess continued feeding the stags, they exchanged their feelings. Both of them said they missed their home and the loved ones waiting for them. They were both uncertain what lives would be like in the other world. The explorer was dubious about the everlasting cold, whereas Princess Maia was now skeptical about warmth and fire. As they continued talking, it finally dawned on the princess. She finally realized that even if she appeared different, that even if she was born in another world, she was just as much a snow person as anyone. It wasn't the stuff that made her up that determined who she was, but the things she remembered. And all that she remembered was Icefield and the snow people. They were all she would ever need, and the only home that her heart would long for, no matter where she went. After the stags had eaten their fill, they slowly sauntered away. The decision to go back home brought warmth to her heart, the only kind she ever wanted to experience. Smiling to herself, Princess Maia thanked the explorer for everything and offered to accompany her to Icefield. Not so surprisingly, she too had decided to go back home the next day, and so they went to bed. One was warm and the other icy cold, just as each preferred their beds to be. With dreams of home swimming in their heads, the explorer and Princess Maia fell asleep just after settling into their camps. Good night, sweet dreams.